So last week, we started by just talking a little bit about the fact that our meditation practice, really any meditation practice, um, creates a kind of holding environment. It doesn't really matter what kind of practice we're doing, just the fact that we're sitting on the cushion, we're not engaged with the outside world, and there's certain sort of interiority that we're experiencing. This is a holding environment in which we get a front row seat to observe the way our mind is, the way our mind and body are, the way our relationship to the world is, and with a kind of sense of curiosity and openness. In so many ways, this is the power of the path. The power of the path and the power of meditation techniques, in many ways, you could say, these are just ways for us to settle and to encounter ourselves. Sometimes in a way that we have never done before, because generally we only really know ourselves, or we only seem to know ourselves in relationship to the world. First, it's relationship to parents, and then school friends, and on and on and on, and then partners. And we're always in some kind of engagement with the outside world. And consequently, we could most of us get to old age and have never had a direct, first person direct experience of who I am, what are my patterns, what is my nature, what are my hopes, my fears, my dreams, what is it that I need, what is it that I want. This is profound. So any time that we spend on the cushion, this is what we naturally begin to discover. And then we talked about the fact that in this process of sort of spontaneous discovery, we develop a kind of intimacy with ourselves, a closeness to ourselves. We get closer and closer. And like any relationship, when we get closer, there is a quality of greater warmth, greater intimacy, greater tenderness, greater acceptance. This is extraordinary. This actually, I would suggest, is this is the transformative power of meditation, is that our relationship to ourselves changes quite dramatically. And then as this begins to dawn on us, we discover something in ourselves that somehow, even though we can't put our finger on it, it feels real. It feels connected. It feels authentic. We come home to ourselves, as we say, and this is something that Rinpoche's father always used to talk about, is that we're lonely, and through meditation we come home to ourselves. Any technique of meditation, the byproduct is that we come home to ourselves and we develop this first person sort of connection, this authentic connection. Then we talked about the fact that this very often shows itself in a kind of tenderness and a kind of sadness. This sadness is a poignancy that we connect very deeply and poignantly with the truth of ourselves and the truth of all beings. In the Tibetan tradition, this is often referred to as the genuine heart of sadness. So then, what again, completely spontaneously, even though in the Joy of Living 2 and the Joy of Living 3, we extend this as further practices, further enhancements, further kind of exercises, you could say, to exercise and strengthen the muscle of connection, of tenderness, of warmth, of love, of kindness, and ultimately of compassion. In a way, you could say that we begin to train in these qualities, but from the point of view of what we call path logic. In other words, how we as people move along the path and change along the path. This progression happens spontaneously. Now, we can do some exercises to strengthen it. But in our tradition, we make, as you already know, the audacious claim that our very nature is already completely replete with love, with compassion, with wisdom. This is who we already are. This is built in. This is not something that we need to make better. It's complete. So from this point of view, what we need to do is we need to discover, we need to settle in to those qualities, to open up what hides them, what blocks them, and to shed light and to become familiar with those qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom that are already present. This is, I would say, is the sort of gospel of Vajrayana Buddhism. In the earlier traditions of the Buddhist teachings, there was an idea that these qualities existed as seeds in our system and that had to be nurtured. In our tradition, the tradition that Mingyur Rinpoche comes from, these qualities are already present as our basic, abiding, fundamental, authentic well-being. Like they say Eskimos have 20 words for snow. We have about 100 words for this. But authentic well-being, unchanging essence, basic goodness, primordial purity, these are various words that point at this. So then what I want to do is then what happens? So as we further soften and we open up, we look out, and as we said last week, the most amazing, seemingly the most obvious, but the most transformative insight comes to us, which is just like me, who is fundamentally okay, fundamentally good and complete and whole. I recognize that, but I also recognize that I completely screw it up. Day after day after day, I screw it up. And the insight comes to us that if this is true for me, this must be true for everyone. This insight is our bridge to the world. It's our connection to the world and to others. This is the insight that we are all in the same boat. We are all the same. This is what in the classic teachings, this is called equalizing. We all have the same hopes and fears. We all have the same innate qualities. We all have the same, we're all equally deserving of being happy and at peace and being safe. This is what we call equalizing. And then, as this process continues to unfold, our heart begins to open further and further and further. And it's almost as like that our sphere of concern and care, just as mind softens and opens up, that our sphere of interest and connection and concern just naturally opens and opens and expands and expands. This is actually called, in the literature, this process is called blossoming. Our heart is blossoming. And if we use this analogy, we could say that it's like a flower. When the flower opens, the scent of the flower just permeates everywhere. So when we open, the quality, the scent of our nature just spontaneously expands limitlessly. And this is the opening of authentic compassion. So then there's many ways to enter into the question of compassion, and should we have compassion, and why should we have compassion, and on and on and on. From this point of view, loving kindness and compassion are our nature. This is not something that we should experience particularly or need to learn to experience. We just need to discover our nature, and there it is, completely full-blown. So again, there's many ways to talk about this. And in The Joy of Living, you talk about, you know, the four boundless attitudes of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, which we'll talk about in the weeks to come, and how to evoke those and strengthen those. But in general, I think it's to even make it simpler, we could say that there's two avenues into the whole world of compassion and care. And the first avenue is the avenue of just feeling. And from this point of view, we're already experiencing this. When we develop a quality of tenderness and warmth and care here, then again, we naturally and spontaneously, as we open, the scent of that care just permeates space and everything in it. This is not something that's particularly conceptual or something that we do, it's a byproduct. And so the Buddha said, just like a mother would her child, her only child, that we should feel like that or respond to everyone as if they were our only child. So this comes naturally for us because we're fundamentally good people. And we've discovered our heart and we care fundamentally and spontaneously. It's because we're human. It's really, in so many ways, it's as simple as that. So for those of you who have had children, or maybe you have a cat, particularly if you have a dog, we know what this is like. We can't wait to feed them, to pet them, to soothe them, to comfort them, to hear them, to listen to them, to understand them, because we're good people and we have a heart. And that goodness is we have unlocked it through our own practice. We have unlocked it and now is just operating spontaneously. So we just feel like we want to do something. This comes through in so many ways. So one of the practices, well, to give you an example, I have a friend who has been a student of Mingyur Rinpoche for quite a long time now. And I can remember in the days when I would travel around the world giving live Joy of Living weekends. And it was a slightly different format, slightly different curriculum. But this person was very shy. Just her nature was very, very shy and standoffish. And she said that one day she was driving down the street and she came to a stoplight, and there was someone in a wheelchair who was on the side of the road and obviously trying to stay on the side of the road so that they weren't hit. And the person hit the curb and fell over. And she said, before she even had a thought, she had stopped the car, gotten out, and was helping him up. And she was extremely shy. She said, I would never have done something like that. This is feeling. This is the natural response to the world that begins to come. So in the Joy of Living Level 2, we talk about the practice of taking and sending, for instance. So in a way, this seems a little stilted, a little odd. Well, maybe it is. But really, it's a kind of an enactment of the most obvious things. Those of you who have had children, when the little one, was 2 and fell and skinned their knee and crying, or skinned their finger and they were crying, what do we say? I don't know. In the world I grew up, we say, oh, here, give me your finger, I'll kiss it away. I'll kiss the pain away. I'll take the pain from you. And this is transformative. This is incredibly healing. This is Tanlin. It's again, that in the tradition that we come from, you'll hear many, many techniques and this and that. But what techniques are? They are ways of enacting what is otherwise instinctual. We're not trying to get something that's not part of who we are. We're not trying to import compassion into a person who has no compassion. That's not at all it. We are just exercising the qualities that are spontaneously there. So for instance, And it's easy to use a mother analogy. Nobody has perfect mothers, on and on. We know that. So this is true of mothers or fathers or friends or brothers or sisters or whatever. But for instance, if our child, if we're watching our child and they fall over, we run towards them. We immediately go towards them. This is our instinct. This is because we have a heart. So this is the blossoming and the expression of natural love and compassion from the point of view of a sort of a natural blossoming and opening of the heart that is enacted by simply being with yourself and discovering that intimate connection with yourself. Then again, we open up, and that begins to expand, frankly, as we go on, limitlessly. And again, this is not morality. This is not, we should do this. This is just our natural experience. If it comes down to the point of morality, then it means that we've missed it and we have to be taught from the outside in. This is a spontaneous unfolding of human goodness. This is why I love this tradition. I think all of us do, because we're just becoming more of who we already are. It's extraordinary. And when we encounter it, we feel this. We feel like, oh, I know this. This makes sense. Thanks for reminding me. Thanks very much. But I got this. Or I've seen this in someone. Or I've experienced this at some time in my life. Maybe when I was young and I had a puppy. This, by the way, is a long advertisement for puppies. I'm obsessed with dogs. Seriously. So this, again, is about the expansion simply through feeling. So there is a second way, but as you know, sometimes feelings change. And there's a second way of accessing this on the basis of logic and reason, which sounds dry, but it's extraordinarily interesting. And it accords a little bit more with the Joy of Living level 3. And that contemplation, this contemplation of the logic of loving kindness and compassion, I have found it's consumed me for about the last 5 or 6 years. I'm just completely fascinated by it. And we'll talk about it next week. So